With Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Colvin. Legislators and other officials are calling Lyme disease a public health crisis here in Massachusetts. In 2009 alone, more than 4,000 cases were reported. Lyme disease is carried by deer ticks. Today on Barnstable This Morning, I spoke with Seth Rolbein, Senior Advisor to Cape and Islands State Senator Dan Wolf. Seth talked about what the state government is doing to try and tackle this public health issue.
A statewide commission was authorized by the legislature, which is something that we pushed hard for. And Representative David Linsky from Natick, whose son, by the way, has Lyme, was really a strong mover on. So it's a commission that's being formed now to really try to do a lot of things related to Lyme. And the importance of it is that there's an emerging strong sense, and this won't be great news to a lot of people on the Cape, but is more so around the state, that we have a significant health issue here that's probably being underreported and continues to be misunderstood, and is affecting a lot of people's lives. And so we need to, begin to marshal both resources and, public understanding to confront that.
Right, Seth, and I was looking at some of the numbers yesterday, and it seems that the number of reported cases of Lyme disease here in Massachusetts have almost doubled since 2005.
Yes, and initially, we've all been around long enough to remember when really it was a disease that was on the Cape. It was a disease that a lot of people sort of misunderstood, and also it was a disease where, in a sense, there's been a lot of sort of blaming the victim. People who had Lyme and were being diagnosed as having perhaps chronic fatigue or emotional issues or other issues that really were not being recognized as being the result of a tick-borne illness.
Right, and I think that's something that we've talked about, in other aspects before, is that really this is a disease that can be quite confusing, and sometimes the symptoms can mimic others, and that's why people haven't paid as much attention to it as they should.
Right. Yes, and it's really it's almost sort of scary. The biology of the disease, it is what's called a spirochete, and it's a disease that will manifest, and then symptoms will essentially diminish. And then it has the capacity to cross what they call the blood-brain barrier and become really, ensconced in the body. It's actually, believe it or not, a relative of syphilis, and that the sort of bacterial structure of it is similar. And so, in much as that horrible disease, presents and then disappears, and then people get confused. They think they're cured, but they're not. So it's scary. It's scary, and of course, the tiny little tick that can move it. Not every deer tick has it, but the ones that do can give it to you if they bite you and they hold on for 24 hours or more. Well,
exactly, and it's especially with all this warm weather we've been having. People want to go out and walk in the woods again, especially here on the Cape, and enjoy the lovely conservation areas and all the wilderness that we have here. And that's really where you have to be the most vigilant to check and make sure that these little tiny bitty little creatures aren't getting on you.
Yeah, we took a long walk after Thanksgiving dinner the next day with friends from the western part of the state and my godchildren and stuff. And at the end of the day, we said, gee, we really should take a good hard look. And sure enough, we pulled off 2 or 3 deer ticks. It became a moment for education. But maybe statewide, those are the moments we need to begin to work toward.
Sure, Seth. So talk to me a little bit about what really the state can do. I mean, obviously, there are things we can do on the personal level, but in terms of what the hopes for this Lyme Disease Commission are, really, what can the government do?
Well, I think the best way to think about it is to split it apart. There's public education, which I think is crucially important, and public awareness. There's also really beginning to get at the medical distribution system and understanding on this. There's continuing controversy, for example, about whether long or short-term antibiotic treatment is appropriate, how and when, and also, by the way, whether insurance companies will pay for longer-term treatment, should that be prescribed by physicians. And I think that the state has a role to play in elevating our understanding of that and bringing that to the table, just as we do with healthcare and insurance issues of all kinds. So I think those are the two key issues: education, outreach, and then health delivery.
Exactly, because we need to be able to understand, or we need to be secure in the fact that if we do get this disease, that our insurance companies will be willing to help cover the cost of treatment.
That's right. That's right. And on both sides of it, there were very reputable physicians who were saying short-term antibiotic treatment is more than enough. Others are saying once you reach a certain point, it's very important to go with long-term treatment. We need better studies on that. I think we need to reach a consensus on that. And then we need to get it funded.
Exactly. So in terms of timelines, Seth, how quickly do you see this happening? And of course, as you said, it is assembled. Are they choosing members at this point?
Yeah, the governor will have the final say on who is on this emerging commission, but there is a definition of where everybody will come from. I can say with pretty much certainty that Senator Wolf will be on this commission and will be representing the Senate.
Great.
Yes, and then we've made some recommendations, as well as the Department of Public Health, other legislators, and so forth, about the makeup of the commission. But there'll be physician, public interest people, Department of Public Health, legislative people, and so forth. It'll be a good commission. I don't know when the governor will release his recommendations, but my understanding is that process is working through, and we're hoping for, soon after the holidays, and so that we can get this thing going. And I'll say parenthetically that one of the concerns that the senator has is that although the commission will be, I think, very good and will get some good stuff done, built into the funding of the commission, there was no money in the legislation. So we need to figure out how to make a lot out of not so much.
Exactly.
And one way to do that, I think, is going to be to look at the real success that the Cape has had. The Cape Cod Lyme Task Force has done some very good work. It's chaired by Brenda Bolin up in Truro, and has been working for years on this issue, and is really far ahead of the rest of the state in terms of all the things we've been talking about: outreach, education, trying to highlight the healthcare issues. And I think that the Cape's work may be used as a kind of a template or a little sort of a good step forward for the rest of the state as this commission starts to move forward.
Right, Seth, and I definitely wanted to mention that I know, especially here on Cape Cod, within Barnstable County, we do have a very active group of people working on this very solution from our I believe it's the Lyme Disease Task Force here on the Cape, and also the county entomologists, with much help from the late Dave Simser, our tick expert, being carried on by Larry Dapsis, of course, really doing some research into these creatures and really attacking the problem at the regional level. So I would definitely assume that that the new Lyme Disease Commission of the state will absolutely tap into those resources that we have here on the Cape.
So it's really important, and our work has been great. And again, funding, is always an issue. The county has stepped up and has really provided funding and important support on this issue. There had been some funding coming out of the federal government and even at the state level to try to support that work. That funding has dried up in the last few years. So I'm really hoping that one goal of the commission is to find good funding sources to really elevate this work. And keep in mind, as scary as this thing is, these ticks need to not only jump on you, but they need to bite you, and then they need to hold on for a while before you can be conceivably exposed to it. And if you are, and if you find this tick, and if you treat it quickly, and if you don't just ignore it, particularly if you get a little ring around the bite, this is a disease that can be cut off, nipped in the bud. So it may be better to be vigilant that way than it is to start, wearing, protective sheaths of chemicals,
Absolutely, and again, as you said, something that that's why it's so very important to check for ticks as soon as you get out of the woods and make sure that you really do a thorough job. And as you said, the ticks got to hold on for at least 24 hours before something can happen. So.
Right.
Well, Seth, thank you so much for joining us today. Very good information, and we look forward to hearing more about the commission and its work, throughout the state, especially here on the Cape, as the days go by.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and it's always great to talk.
With Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Colvin.